Good morning. Good to see you this morning. Some were able to brave the elements, some were not able to brave the elements, some have broken water pipes. And one good sister sent out an email or a text to some of us, and she said that she was afraid she would be offensive because of lack of hygiene. I was offended that she thought she would be offensive. But nevertheless, we have others that are not able to get out because of the ice, and still others that are with family members and other places due to the holidays. Merry Christmas from Suzanne and myself to you and to yours. We hope that you have a very good Christmas. If you haven't already, maybe you've already had your Christmas. If you haven't, hope that you have a great time with your family and friends, and you have a lot of food. Our load is coming tomorrow and be here for 2-3 days, and so we're looking forward to that. We've already seen her, and she's had a big Christmas. And the one thing I was amazed at is Graceland turned 2 on the 16th, so last week. But you'd talk to her, and she'd be talking in her little voice, and she'd be doing fine. And you say, "And what does Santa Claus say?" She'd go, "Oh." So she got the idea, she something else. But we're grateful for you and your presence with us this morning. As I want us to talk about gifts that you can give all year long. 'Tis the season to be jolly. But can we really be jolly? We've just fought all the crowds. We've shopped, and maybe we've done the new thing of shop online. We had I was just breaking down some of the boxes yesterday of things that we had from where we'd gotten things shipped to our house. But you've braved the elements, you've spent the money, you've also gained a few pounds probably through the eating. And if you haven't, just keep working at it. You'll get there. We've enjoyed the season and enjoyed the time. We've had presents, and we've had the aftermath of presents. It's a glorious time to give. And presents, folks look at presents in a lot of different ways. Folks like to give what's practical, what will be used. Some like to give what's funny. Some like to give what is an heirloom. Some like to give something that they've given little thought to. They just ran into the store and got, and some have given a great deal of thought to the presents that they've given. But I want you to think about, while we usually give gifts at Christmas, and maybe birthday, and maybe a special occasion or two through the year that earmarks maybe a remembrance, that there are gifts that you can give all year long, not just on Christmas, not just on birthdays or anniversaries, but here's some good gifts to give all year long. First of all is the gift of listening to what people has to say. Not hearing what people have to say, but listening. What's the difference? The difference is this: hearing, you hear a noise. Listening, you're picking up on what they're saying. A true model of communication, if you were to take a communication class in school, a true model of communication is that there is a sender and there's a receiver, and the receiver then receives the message that is being sent, but is able also, and many times will, whether verbally or non-verbally, send a message back. That's communication. Listening is the ability to sit there and to hear what's being said, but to be able to respond to it. Listening is letting someone pour out their burdens. And while we have the command to bear one another's burdens, Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, we're to take that opportunity. Because Paul goes on, it's just so interesting. Verse 2, he says, bear one another's burdens. In verse 10, he says, as we therefore have opportunity, let's do good unto all men, especially those of the household of faith. Well, when's our opportunity? When people are going through a trying time and they need someone to listen. When people's hearts are hurting and they need someone to listen. When people are facing obstacles in their life and they want someone to listen. When people have a good story and they just want to tell it, they just want to share it with somebody because they read it, they heard it, they saw it, they experienced it, they remembered it in the last little bit, and they just want somebody to hear it. It's a good time to listen. It's a good time to listen when folks facing tragedy. It's a good time to listen when the sun is not shining on their day. When they're the caboose at the end of the train, when they are the tail end of a procession, when they face with life's issues and ills and problems, it's a good time to listen. You see, God gave us the model, didn't he? I love the Lord, the psalmist said in Psalm 116 and verse 1, because he has heard my voice, he's heard my supplication. I will call unto him all my days, and he will hear. God hears. He listens to what we have to say. He listens to our pleas. He listens to our cries. He allows us to share with him our burdens, but our joys, our heartaches and our sorrows, but our disappointments and our setbacks. The gift, though, that we can give folks all the year is to listen to what's going on in their life. You know, we're really, in many ways, most of us are not really good listeners. Because we're listening what people are saying, but we're listening with the intent of saying something else. And a lot of times, if you're like me, I catch myself wanting to match stories with people. People will tell me a story and I hear it and I'm recording it because I probably will steal it and tell somebody else that story. But I'm guilty too of thinking, yes, but here's a story. Sometimes we try to read between the lines, and sometimes we try to guess what they say. My sweet, sweet wife, as I start, will sometimes try to finish my sentences, and I'll just say, can you listen for a minute? Because some folks are like a man told me one time, I've shared this with you, but a man told me one time, we were talking, and he looked at me, and I hadn't said anything. He said, I know what you're thinking. Well, I knew what was going on in his head, or what usually goes on in his head, and so I said, okay, what was I thinking? And I told, or rather, I told him, I said, no, here's what I was thinking. He said, you know, he looked at me and what he said? He said, you're wrong. You wasn't thinking that. I was. See, folks need to learn to listen to what's being said. It's a wise man. It's a wise man whose counsel runs deep, Solomon said in Proverbs 17. It's a man of knowledge, though, Proverbs 20, that spares his words. We need to learn to listen to what people say, to understand what is going on in their lives, to listen to what they're teaching and what they're saying, to listen to their heartaches and burdens. A few years ago, someone put an advertisement up. For $20, I'll listen to you for 30 minutes. And they named the place where they were going to be. And before they ever started, there was a deep, long line of people that were willing to give $20 for someone just to listen to them for 30 minutes. We need to give that gift of listening to people. And so in February and in March and in April and May, listen to people and listen to what they have to say. But then another gift that we can give is the gift of love. Well, that stands to reason, doesn't it? Let us therefore love one another. John would write in 1 John chapter 4 and verse 7. Jesus himself would say that we're a new commandment. He says, I give it to you that you love one another as I've loved you. He goes on in the next couple of pages. He says, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you have love one for another. Jesus taught the principle of love. And, you know, we often talk about, well, I love people. I love this one and I love that one. But we have to understand there's different levels of love. And also from the standpoint of we love things differently. I love Italian food, but I also love a good steak. They're completely different. I love a good breakfast. Completely different. I love my wife. I love my son and my daughter-in-law. I love my granddaughter. I love you. It's all on different levels. So we have to ask ourselves, really and truly, preacher, what's love? If Jesus taught us to love, and John says that this is what God expects of us, because this is what God is, then really what is love? Love is wanting what is best for the other. Love is desiring to help the other. Love is saying, okay, how can I help you? Love is not just an affection that's felt, but it is action that is taken. Love is that which is a response, if you will, to the individual itself, or herself, or himself. Love is being willing to take care of someone. Love is being willing to listen, like we talked about a while ago. Love is being willing to go out and do something for someone. Love is willing to be of service to others. And while we're commanded in Galatians chapter 5 that we're to serve one another, love serves. We can often look at and ponder the words of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where Paul kind of gives us an outline of what love is and what it's not and what it does and does not do. And invariably what he tells us here is this is love. And this is important in your life. Preacher, there are some folks I just don't like. There are some folks that, I just don't like them. I had a man once look at me and he says, I love you, but I don't like you. I wanted to ask so badly, but I bit my tongue because I was really just taken aback by what he said. What's the difference in how can you love me and not like me? You might say, but preacher, there are just some folks I don't like. I may not like what they do. I may not like their actions. I don't think God likes the sinner's actions, but he still loves the sinner. And therefore he likes him, but not what he does. I understand that there are folks that don't always do what you want them to do and don't always say and don't always respond in the way that you want them to. And so consequently, it's kind of hard to get along with them. Got you. But you still love them. You still like them. Why? Because that's what God expects of us. God expects us to be individuals that not only are folks that love, but that love is shown in its kindness and its compassion. There's a great story that's always intrigued me. It's found in the book of 2 Samuel. It's the time in which David wants to know if there's any of Jonathan's house that's left. And there's one, a lame child, Mephibosheth. I don't know. I've always liked the story. Maybe it's because as a kid I was the only one that could say Mephibosheth, or maybe it's because I can't say it and still can't. I don't know. It's just one of those weird names that sticks with you, right? But do you remember he was lame, and remember what was said? He says, as long as you live, here's the land, and you'll eat. You'll have plenty to eat. And so he showed him kindness. There are folks that admittedly it's tough sometimes to show them kindness. It's tough to show them compassion. But yet at the same point in time too, my responsibility is to give a gift and to give the gift of love to folks, not just this season of the year, but may it bubble forth to January, to February, into March, into April, to May, into June, and the dog days of summer, of July and August and September. You see, I need to learn to love. And so the Bible teaches love, and to love in kindness, and to love in compassion, and to love in sympathy, and to love in helping, and to love in serving, and to love in helping. And so my gift And my gift to others is to love. But then another gift that we can give all year long is the gift of appreciation. Appreciation is not hard to express, but it sure is hard from some people. When I stop somewhere and let somebody walk in front of me as I'm sitting in the car needing to go because all of a sudden there's no traffic coming from either side, and yet you let that person walk in front of you and they don't acknowledge it, don't you just go, or when you're riding in the car and you pull down on 70 on Charlotte there, and where I-40 merges in is right before you can go to get on I-40 east, or you can keep on going and go to Nashville West, and they come off of I-40, and they're probably some of my wonderful folks that I remember from Dixon County, and they just pull smack dab in front of you, and they just nudge in, and they don't acknowledge that they've done it. And all you want to do is just say, can you just throw up your hand and wave and say, thank you? My sweet wife, I talk bad about her. I talk good about her too. When we're in the car and I'm driving and somebody lets us in, you know what she does? She throws up her hand. I throw up my hand, but she throws up her hand. It's just a simple appreciation. Hey, appreciate what you've done. Appreciate you letting us do this. Appreciating you letting us in. Appreciation is that which is expressed. It comes from a thankful heart. Now, I want you to hear the words of Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 18. Here's what he says. In everything, give thanks. Now, he didn't say for everything. He said in everything. In everything in life, express appreciation. Preacher, there are times in my life that I have difficulty with that. I get you. There are times where I have the heartaches and the hurdles and the disappointments and the low parts and the ditches and the valleys. Express appreciation, because somewhere in there's something. If nothing else, you're growing in those times. You're being developed, your character is being developed, your soul is being developed, your faith is growing stronger if you'll let it. But then there are those times of appreciation to others for what they've done. It's in the 1800s. Matter of fact, it was in 1860 that a man by the name of Edwin Spencer was on the shores of Lake Michigan, and a storm had suddenly come to Lake Michigan. And a boat had capsized not far off from the shore. The water was frigid. It was winter. It was cold. Spencer saw the struggles of people. And so he started to swim out. And that day he saved 17 individuals from the icy cold water of Lake Michigan. Folks that were struggling, folks that because of the cold water were not able to swim to shore, or maybe they didn't have the ability to swim at all. And years later, know that Ed Spencer and the history of him, that his life and his well-being was really affected by the icy cold water that he swam in that day. But several years later, after the event, he was being interviewed in a local paper. And they asked Spencer, they said, what do you remember of that day? You're a great hero. You saved 17 individuals. What do you remember of that day? And he said, I remember that not a one of them ever came back to thank me for what I did. Sometimes in life, we get clouded and we get busy and we don't think about it. Just a simple thank you. About the guy that stepped aside to let me walk out of the door. About the guy that gave me a buggy when there were only two there and there were three people in front of him. The guy that I know of that did something nice for somebody else, and all I needed to do was sit down and write a thank you note to express to them my appreciation for what they've done for others. You see, we sometimes find it difficult to say thank you because sometimes we feel like, well, that just puts them on a little higher plane. But the reality of it is we're to be thankful people. giving thanks always. Paul would remind us in Ephesians chapter 5. And so let us learn to be able to express to folks appreciation for what they've done, either to me or to somebody else, to express appreciation for their efforts, but also to express appreciation to God. From the heart comes thankfulness. If we'll learn to give the gift of appreciation, we'll become better people. And we'll serve not only our God, but we'll serve our fellow man better. But next, we need to learn to give the gift of good attitude. Good attitude is important. You know, there are some folks that are just cranky. They get up on the bed cranky, grouchy. Did you ever hear the story about the guy that he and his wife were having troubles? One day he was out talking and he was talking about how terrible his wife was, and he was being grouchy the whole time. And finally somebody looked at him and said, "Did you wake up grouchy this morning?" He said, "No, I let her sleep." We just don't get it sometimes that we're the one that's grouchy. You know, sometimes we're grouchy, sometimes we're happy. I'd rather be happy. Sometimes we're discouraging. You know, all we can say is no, and all we can do is make people feel down and terrible about themselves and about what's going on. And yet we can be encouraging. Sometimes our attitudes are such that all we know to do is to just sit back and do nothing. And to say nothing. Sometimes we say too much. Sometimes we have those differences in attitudes. An attitude is simply a state of mind or a disposition towards someone or something else. Ask yourself, what kind of state of mind do I usually have? Do I wake up in the morning? Do I wake up happy? Or do I wake up disgruntled? Do I feel good about myself and the hope that I have in my life and the hope that goes on in my daily activities? Or do I just feel sort of milquetoast? Just, you know, you ask yourself, because how you feel is how you're going to project. And so you project in a way that is full of happiness. God wants his people to be happy. People have said that. They've walked into preachers' offices and preachers explained to them what is going on in their life that's sin, and they've walked out and said, but God wants me to be happy. God wants you to be obedient, number one. Yes, God wants you happy. But that happiness then is shown forth in an attitude. Not the first Sunday of January, because as Jay announced, next Sunday is the first Sunday. On Sunday nights, the first Sunday night that we sing of the quarter, we're going to sing Sunday night, and we're going to have light fellowship, light snacks in the fellowship room after services next Sunday night. So we'll have a shortened service, or shortened sermon, not service, sermon. But then the following Sunday night, Lord willing, in January and February, we're going to talk about the Beatitudes. Blessed, happy. And yet you're going to say, man, some of these attitudes, I don't see how they talk about being humble and being contrite. How in the world can I be happy? Well, we'll show you. We have to learn to have that good attitude. That attitude that smiles, the attitude that moves forward, the attitude that is happy with life and happy with going on. The attitude that is willing to be positive in a world that's negative. The attitude that's willing to share in a world that is selfish. The attitude that is willing to be on top of the world instead of on the bottom. And all because we realize what has been done for us. All because we look at our blessings and count them daily and know that we are blessed people. We must be like the man that went with a friend of his, and they were walking through the city streets. And as they were walking through the city streets, that one man bought a paper. He said he bought a paper every day. And when he marked the paper, he looked at the lady, he smiled, and he said, "I hope you're having a good day." And he placed the money in the lady's hand, and he walked off. And she grumbled about how terrible it was and how the world was falling apart. And so the man's friend said, "Is she always like that?" And the gentleman said, "Every day." "Well, why are you so nice to her if she's so mean and grouchy and negative?" And he said, "Because I'm a gentleman, and gentlemen do what's right, no matter whether others are or not." The attitude of this world may stink, but the attitude of the Christian should be good and positive. Let's give the gift of a good attitude. But let's give the gift of patience. As you grow older, do your patience run shorter? Yeah, preacher, if you don't hurry up, I'm going to miss my fruitcake and boiled custard. Patience is a virtue. Patience is something that hopefully we grow more of each day. Patience is the ability to not blow your horn at that guy just because the red light just turned green. Patience is looking at that baby a while ago. Suze turned to me and said, "He's as sleepy as he can be." And he was. Patience is waiting behind that little lady in the electric cart at Walmart. And the reason you need patience there is because if you're in front of her, she's going to run over you. But patient behind her. And realizing that she needs something on that next to the top shelf, which you can reach, and she can't reach because she's sitting in that cart and she needs it. Patience is waiting in the doctor's office. You see, that's why they call us patients when we go, because he's running late. Why is he running late? Well, he's running late because he overbooked, probably number one, but he's also running late because that lady 3 patients ahead of you, he allowed her 5 minutes and she took 15. Patience is not getting mad when your spouse wants you to do something that you don't have time for. Patience is not saying a curt word just because you don't like what's said or done. Patience, it's a virtue. Patience is hard, though, isn't it? Man, I try to be patient. And I'm one of these individuals that I make a decision and I go with it. Straightforward. I don't have a reverse on me, I don't guess. Now, I'm willing to say I'm sorry and I'm willing to apologize when I do wrong. But at the same time, too, you need to learn to make sure that you're patient with people. You know, the old adage, lead, follow, or get out of the way. We need to understand that those folks that if we're leading and they're following, or those folks that are in our way still need our patience. Why? 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient. It bears all things, believes all things. It endures all things. And so while Paul would tell us in Colossians chapter 4, verse 2, to be patient with all men, we need to learn that gift of patience, of giving patience to people, even when we think they don't deserve it, or even when they do something against us. Abraham Lincoln got the Secretary of War by a man by the name of Van Stanton. Stanton was his arch enemy. Stanton had run against Lincoln when Lincoln had won the presidency. Stanton had said a lot of things about Lincoln that were terrible, and folks couldn't believe that Lincoln would ask him to be his Secretary of War, and he did. And the reason he did was because he said he's a good man and he's a fit for that job. Patience with the person that says something about you. Patience with the neighbor that won't take up and do what you want him to do. Patience with the neighbor that won't clean up their yard, that won't mow their yard in the summer, won't rake up their leaves in the fall. Patience with the individual that's just grouchy, grumpy, and mean. Patience. That's a gift we can give, and we can give all year long. Oh man, those are some great gifts. Listening, love, appreciation. Be an individual that is willing to have a good attitude, a good outlook, and to be patient with those people that we run in contact with. The greatest gift, though, that was given by Jesus Christ. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 15, we've always ascribed that unspeakable or indescribable gift as being Christ. And it sure seems to fit, although the context might lead you in a little different direction. But when Paul wrote to the church at Corinth, he says, thanks be to God. Depending upon the version that you use, it says unspeakable in the Old King James. In the New King James, it says indescribable. The Greek word literally means beyond words. That's the greatest gift. Given for us on a hill on a Friday outside the city, between two thieves, so that we might have salvation. This holiday season, I hope you got some gifts. I hope you got what you needed or what you wanted. But the greatest gift was given. And now all he says is, do you want to receive it? Do you want to open it? You give gifts all year long. I've given one to you. Avail yourself of it. If you need to respond to the Lord's invitation, won't you come? On together we stand and sing.